9. Caught by the coyotes. In Canada's first ever documented fatal attack, a pack of wild coyotes mauled a 19-year-old woman to death. In 2009, Taylor Mitchell, a rising country music singer, had the entire world at her feet when coyotes put an end to her life. The bright young vocalist had just released her debut CD to critical acclaim. Judges nominated her for the Young Performer of the Year at the Canadian Folk Music Awards. She was a nature lover who'd taken a rare day off from her tour to stroll around in the woods in Nova Scotia's Cape Breton Highlands National Park. The same afternoon, 2 coyotes approached an American couple in the vicinity. It startled the couple because it happened in the middle of the road. The duo took a picture of the pack. A few minutes later, the couple heard a young woman screaming amidst the eerie howls of coyotes. They followed the shrill cries of pain and 3 other hikers. They found Mitchell lying defenseless on the ground with a bloody coyote standing over her. It didn't budge when the gang tried to scare the coyote away. Instead, it growled and held its ground till the Royal Canadian Mounted Police arrived and fired a shotgun at it. Devastating bite marks covered Mitchell's head and limbs. Despite the severe blood loss, the woman tried to fight desperately for her life as a helicopter rushed her to the nearest hospital. Sadly, because of the profuse bleeding from several wounds, she died shortly after. What followed Mitchell's brutal death was a string of coyote attacks on humans. As a result, officials issued a warning and advised all visitors to stay clear of Stanley Park in Vancouver. According to evidence found at the site, the coyotes possibly mistook her for a deer. The beasts then dragged her around as she tried to get back to her car. All Mitchell had to defend herself against the killer coyotes was a penknife and her keys. And clearly, that wasn't enough. So, make sure you're better equipped than she was before heading out for a hike into the woods. 8. Honeymoon down the cliff. A judge sentenced a 22-year-old newlywed to 30 years in jail for her heinous crime. She'd shoved her spouse off a scenic cliff in Montana. Jordan Lynn Graham, 22, claimed to have second thoughts before killing her husband only 8 days after their wedding. Cody Johnson, 25, died after falling off the edge of a popular hiking trail in Glacier National Park on July 17, 2013. He died after falling 200 feet, 60 meters. Authorities discovered Johnson's body on July 11, 2013, with an 8-inch long gash on the forehead. Graham indicated that the location was on her husband's bucket list, even though she claimed she had no idea where he'd gone. According to the Missoulian, US District Judge Donald Molloy stated that the Kalispell lady, who continually lied and changed her narrative about what happened, never apologized for the murder and showed no remorse. The federal judge who handed down the punishment, which contains no possibility of parole, stated, "She was a normal human, at least at the moment. However, how would a normal human murder her 8-day husband?" Graham and prosecutors reached an agreement days into her criminal case in December 2013. The young woman confessed to her crime in exchange for a 3-decade sentence. After reading a statement in which prosecutors deemed the homicide premeditated, they recommended a sentence of 50 years to life in prison. Graham got cold feet and wanted a new trial, arguing the agreement was illusory and a hollow formality. Molloy refused her request to change the trial and upheld the conditions of the plea agreement. On March 27, 2013, he sentenced her to 30 years in prison. "I have no explanations for why I didn't make different decisions," Graham told the court. Graham initially told detectives that her new husband had gone out hiking with a bunch of friends. She even wrote an email from her fictitious Tony, claiming Johnson would never return. Investigators quickly saw through her story and discovered she got cold feet shortly after the wedding. Graham finally gave up and told the investigators how she and Johnson fought while walking up the trail. She then shoved him much harder than she had expected. Investigators later found that Graham was very apprehensive and had several reservations concerning her participation in the marital act. 7. Safari gone wrong. In April 2019, 35-year-old Kimberly Sue Endicott was on safari with an elderly Canadian husband and wife and their guide. Suddenly, 4 unidentified armed men in military uniforms attacked them at nightfall. According to authorities, they held the group at gunpoint before taking the keys to their safari vehicle. They left with Endicott and the guide. The guide was a Congolese national named Jean-Paul Marenge Ramezzo. Queen Elizabeth National Park in southwest Uganda is a famous tourist destination with luxury wilderness camps. Armed rangers occasionally accompany tourists visiting the area to protect them from poachers or wildlife. The kidnappers left the Canadian visitors, Martin and Barbel Jurius, behind. They notified the camp manager, who escorted them back to safety. The kidnappers used one of the victims' cell phones to demand a ransom of $500,000, which investigators believe was the motive of the kidnapping. Authorities commissioned a joint operation involving cops, the military, and wildlife officials to locate and rescue the abducted individuals. According to a company spokeswoman, the kidnapped tourist guide worked for Wild Frontiers Uganda, a group organizing safaris within the East African nation since 1996. After they paid the ransom, the kidnappers released Endicott and the guide unharmed 4 days later. Bashir Hangi, a spokesperson for the Uganda Wildlife Authority, said that the national park spans 760 square miles, 1,223 square kilometers, is home to over 95 mammals and 600 bird species, and is mostly safe. This incident should not deter tourists in any way. In an interview with ABC News, Hangi said, "This is a one-off incident. It's an isolated incident. That's not something that happens daily, and it's not something we're known for. We call it an accident. It's tragic, regrettable, but it happened," said the narrator. 6. Trampled by the beast. In April 22, at Kaziranga National Park, a wild elephant mauled a Dutch visitor to death after he insisted on staying and taking pictures while his friends and guide fled from the charging animal. Robert William Goldback, 55, was trekking with a guide, an armed forest ranger, and 8 others through Assam's Kaziranga's Panbari Reserve Forest, India. The dense jungle is a popular spot with birdwatchers and home to the wild Makhana young male elephant. We got going around 6:30 a.m. The overseas visitors were ecstatic to see a rare Asian paradise flycatcher. At around 9 p.m., we were startled to see a massive elephant only 33 feet, 10 meters away. "I sensed trouble since it was glaring at us," said guide Abdur Rahman. Rahman claimed he alerted everyone to leave the area, but an ecstatic Goldback remained to capture the moment. "As I moved away with the others, the guard, Subhash Senapati, remained with him," Rahman stated. When he was about 30 meters away, he heard gunshots. The elephant charged at them after some had fled, according to Senapati. "I shot 3 rounds into the air, but it continued to charge towards us. I ran away, yelling at the tourists to run as well," he explained. "Then I heard a noise, like an elephant slamming against trees, followed by screams. It was an instant death. When I returned, I discovered the tourist's lifeless body twisted between 2 trees in the creepers." A few days later, a wild elephant killed a 40-year-old tea garden worker, Meena Tengal, 12 miles, 20 kilometers away. Forest officials believe it was the same tusker. 5. Washed away. Flash floods killed another Dutch tourist in a famous cave in Malaysia's mountainous Mulu National Park on Borneo Island. The search for the guide who accompanied the tourist was underway. Local fire and rescue head Lorpo Kiong identified Pieters Hans Hovenkamp, 66, of the central Netherlands as the deceased. Officials flew the body to Miri for further investigation. He drowned in the caves as a result of flash floods. His body was discovered in a cave river and transferred to the public hospital in Miri for a post-mortem, news organization AFP reported. 4 days later, a rescue operation involving 68 people led them to a newly discovered 246-foot, 75-meter passageway deep inside the cave. Rescuers found Robiazal Robin, the 20-year-old local tour guide, dead. In July 2019, Hovenkamp was on a tour of the famous Deer Cave, home to at least 3 million bats that produce stunning patterns in the sky as they leave at sunset. 8 more tourists from the same group, who nearly became victims, survived after fleeing to higher ground. Mulu Park, a World Heritage Site in Sarawak State's remote Borneo jungle, is known for its caves, cliffs, and gorges. It attracts thousands of visitors each year, particularly during the welcoming showers during the summer months. It was a freak catastrophe, Law said, referring to the unfortunate death. 4. Gone with the Wind. 31-year-old Joel Thomason went missing on a solo trek in the Yosemite National Park on September 6, 2021. The United States Army reservist was to return from his hike between Hetch Hetchy to Lake Eleanor on September 9, 2021. Instead, a park ranger spotted him near the steep section of O'Shaughnessy Dam on the first day of Thomason's hike, which investigators believe was the last time anyone saw him. After several months of search operations, authorities presumed Thomason had died on the ill-fated hike. His family organized a memorial service in Turlock on December 4, 2021, and started a GoFundMe page to help his wife and 2-year-old son. Though it's improbable he's alive, explains the GoFundMe page, without verifying his location, Joel is deemed a missing person. In California, getting a death certificate for a missing person can take up to 5 years, so his wife Amanda won't be able to collect on items like Joel's life insurance or Social Security to help bridge the gap. Thomason isn't the only one who vanished into thin air at the sprawling park. The following case is another of Yosemite National Park's several unsolved disappearances. 3. Lost and never found. In August 2000, 49-year-old Ruth Ann Rupert left her home in Florida for Yosemite National Park. She was an accomplished climber who frequently ventured to great heights. One of her favorite stories was about how she ascended Mount Kilimanjaro with a freezing foot. Rupert traveled to Argentine Peak in Colorado to ring in the new year, while others worried about Y2K. For such a seasoned climber, the trek at Yosemite should have been a breeze. Rupert had intended to join a backpacking group that would go 19 miles, 30 kilometers across the park. Instead, she was upset when she woke with an eye infection, forcing her to miss the climb while she had to seek medical attention. Unhappy with the turn of events, she took things into her hands. She went shopping and bought a tent at Curry Village. Rupert seems to have vanished after that. She left her supplies behind at the tent, which is not something a seasoned hiker would ideally overlook. Her family's confident that she'd never abandoned them and that she had no intention of harming herself. Search teams never found Rupert despite a search and rescue mission. Finally, 8 years later, someone discovered Rupert's backpack lodged in a drain in Fireplace Creek, about 5 miles 8 kilometers away from Curry Village, where she was last seen. How Rupert's backpack ended up there remains a mystery, just like her whereabouts. 2. Into the Canyon. Drake Kramer, a 21-year-old college student, was so passionate about nature and hiking that the skilled outdoorsman majored in geology at the University of Texas. But one particular visit to the Grand Canyon ended the man and his family's dreams. Sadly, a lovely evening with his parents at the movies on January 29th was the last day the family had with him. Speculations grew when Kramer's last message to his mother surfaced. It read, "I need to be back with Mother Earth and set my soul free." So did Kramer hint at a suicide? To unravel this mystery, let's go deeper into what happened. Kramer flew to California and then to the Grand Canyon out of the blue with no preparation. On February 1st, 2015, he landed at the Bright Angel Lodge in Arizona. Although Kramer had been there several times before, he'd never traveled alone. Authorities reported he left his car at a lodge nearby and possibly made it on his own toward the south rim of the Grand Canyon. We agree that the topography of the south rim is quite mixed, making it difficult to navigate. However, it's improbable that nobody would discover any trace of him or his bones. Kramer's body has never been located, nor have there been any indications of what happened to him. His family remains optimistic and denies the possibility of suicide. 1. From Mesa Verde to missing. When he disappeared, Mitchell Dale Sterling was 51 years old, 6 foot tall, 200 pounds, with grayish-brown hair. Sterling was last seen while trekking in the Mesa Verde National Park on June 9, 2013. He traveled with his wife, father, and mother on a road trip. Sterling began hiking at 4:30 p.m. after telling his parents that he wanted to view the Spruce Treehouse. The Petroglyph Point Trail leads to the dwelling, less than a quarter mile, 0.4 kilometers long. Sterling, however, never came back. Authorities discovered human remains in a secluded park region thanks to an anonymous tip. On September 17, 2020, U.S. Park Rangers, an ISP special agent, and Montezuma County Coroner's Office officials discovered and collected the remains. They found Sterling's body and several personal items around 4.2 miles, 6.7 kilometers from where he was last seen. At the end of the 7-year-long investigation, officials found no evidence of foul play.
Number 10. Alex Jones's wife. Police arrested the wife of Alex Jones at the couple's house in Austin, Texas for domestic violence. It happened on Christmas Eve 2021, with Alex allegedly fearing for his life as his wife pummeled him. According to the police report, Alex said his wife hit him over 20 times, beat him with a soap bottle, and tried to bash him with a stone ball. If you're not sure who Alex Jones is, he's the maniac conspiracy theorist who founded InfoWars years ago. Pretty much every social media platform has kicked him out, but he used to be a pretty big name. His wife, Erica Wuff Jones, is just as nutty as he is. The police arrested her after Alex called them to complain that she was beating him and threatening him with a club. When asked about what happened later on, Alex responded he loves his wife and cares about her greatly, but that there appears to be some kind of medication imbalance going on with her. He also said Erica accused him of cheating, which was what started the violent altercation as the pair were bathing their child. Number 9. Angry football wife. Police arrested the wife of NFL player Dwayne Haskins in July 2021 after she knocked out the football player's tooth. Dwayne plays for the Pittsburgh Steelers and is a pretty big name. He married his wife, Calabria Gondrezic Haskins, a few months before the incident in March. When the pair traveled to Las Vegas to renew their wedding vows less than 6 months after the original ceremony, things got a little heated. The couple was staying at a luxury hotel when they started fighting. It began with a verbal altercation about what they wanted to do for the evening. Dwayne wanted to hit the club with some of his friends and wasn't interested in waiting for his wife and her friends to get ready. This caused her to become so angry that she launched herself at him, knocking out Dwayne's tooth and busting his lip. Police arrested her and took her away. Even though she's supposed to appear in court this August, the couple has already made up. They're posting pictures together again on Instagram, and chances are prosecutors will drop all the charges. Sadly, Haskins died around 7 a.m. on April 9, 2022, after he was struck by a dump truck while he was crossing Interstate 595 near Fort Lauderdale, Florida, on foot. He was in Florida to train with several of his Steelers teammates. Haskins' wife said that he had run out of gas and was walking to a gas station when the truck hit him. 8. El Chapo's wife. The wife of a legendary Mexican drug lord El Chapo has gone through quite a transition these past few years. She was a nobody, an obscure wife married to a terrifying drug dealer. Then her name was everywhere. She became just as famous as the Kardashians, right before she shamed herself and was arrested. The story of Emma Coronel Aispuro is one of pure insanity. Her name only became known after the police arrested her husband and sentenced him to spend the rest of his life in prison. She exploded on social media. She was supposed to launch a fashion line, but then she appeared on a reality show, and she was getting filthy rich just being the wife of a criminal. The authorities don't like these kinds of things. In June 2021, she pleaded guilty to a whole slew of charges, including illegal drug distribution. For her role in the Sinaloa cartel, the courts gave her 3 years in prison. She could have faced life, but the prosecutors asked that she receive the shortest sentence possible. They have locked her up for now, but she'll soon be out and still young and wealthy enough to have a pretty great life. She should be out of prison by the time she's 35. Her husband is 64, but she's significantly younger than him. She married the drug kingpin when she was just 17, and he was 50. Before the law even considered her an adult, she was sitting at the top of a Mexican drug cartel. Number 7. Reese Witherspoon and her drunk husband. Reese Witherspoon was at the top of her game in the early 2000s, until about a decade ago. She has done little recently, but she got herself sent to jail with a charge of disorderly conduct back in 2013. It was all because Witherspoon flipped out while in Atlanta filming a movie called The Good Life. She freaked out because her husband, a Hollywood agent by the name of James Toth, was being arrested for drunken driving. Trooper First Class Jay Pyland had pulled the Hollywood couple over. It didn't take long for the officer to see that James was drunk. And as he was busy arresting James, Reese Witherspoon abused the cop verbally. She accused him of being a fake police officer. She got out of the vehicle when the trooper warned her not to. And to be quite honest, she kind of went full-out Karen. She told the officer that as a US citizen, she could stand on American ground wherever she wanted. And it was about that time that Officer Pyland put her in handcuffs. But don't worry, The handcuffs didn't stop Reese Witherspoon from running her mouth. She asked if the trooper knew who she was, and when Pylan said he had no clue who she was, Reese told him he was about to find out the hard way. In the end, the whole thing was wildly embarrassing. It might be part of the reason we see little of Reese Witherspoon anymore. Her husband was way over the legal drinking limit, and she must have known that, seeing as she was in the vehicle with him and acting belligerent. Number 6. Slimy Bollywood husband. Police have arrested the husband of Bollywood star Shilpa Shetty for some pretty bizarre crimes. If you're not familiar with Shilpa Shetty, all you need to know is that she's huge in India. She also spent a brief time in the spotlight in Britain, thanks to winning Celebrity Big Brother. The police arrested her husband Raj Kundra in 2021 in Mumbai. This was following a very long investigation by the police, who finally gathered sufficient evidence to label Raj as a key conspirator in an adult film production ring. Adult films may be legal in America, but not in India. Indian authorities activated one of the most recent laws in 2015 to punish those publishing or distributing obscene materials with up to 7 years in jail. But Raj went above and beyond just distributing material. Officials have alleged that he lured women into making these adult films with him personally. Although he's married to one of the most famous actresses in the country and is already filthy rich, he lured one woman in particular, using the fake promise of getting her a job in acting. It was one of the slimiest things a scumbag could do. But Raj has a long history of being slimy. Authorities banned him from cricket activities in 2015, following accusations that he was fixing matches. And even now that police have arrested him for coercing women into making adult films with him, his wife still supports him vocally. Number 5. Ted Nugent's gun-toting wife. Police arrested the wife of the legendary rock star Ted Nugent in 2013 for trying to take a handgun onto an airplane. It happened in August when Charmaine Ann Nugent put a handgun in her carry-on luggage and tried to get it through airport security. The security officers identified the gun and arrested Charmaine immediately and took her into custody at the Dallas-Fort Worth International Airport. When the police questioned the rock star's wife about the handgun, she told them she had forgotten it was there. It was in her bag, but she didn't even think about it when she tried to catch her flight to Fort Lauderdale in Florida. According to what she said, Charmaine had been carrying a handgun ever since she started receiving death threats. But even with her license to carry a concealed weapon, she couldn't bring it onto an airplane. She was arrested and later released, and she hasn't made that same mistake since. Number 4. Estranged kidnapping plot. The wife of Instagram influencer Jay Mazzini was arrested in 2021 for being involved in a plot to kidnap and terrorize a man from Fort Lee who had posted negative comments about her husband online. And then, after her arrest, to make things even more outrageous, she tried to convince the victim to drop the charges against her. Jay Mazzini's real name is Jabara J. Igbara. He made a name for himself on social media by distributing enormous stacks of cash to random people throughout New York City. Earlier in 2021, the FBI busted him for scamming some of his followers, of which he had nearly 1 million at the time, out of over $2 million worth of Bitcoin. Then came the kidnapping. Together with his wife, Jomana Danoon, they plotted revenge against the Fort Lee man who said mean things on the internet. Jabara picked him up at a 7-Eleven under the pretense that they would talk over a coffee. But when he got into the Land Rover with the internet celebrity, so did 2 of Jabara's associates. They immediately spooked him, and he jumped out of the car and ran away. The crew chased him, beat him, and then dragged him back into the SUV. They took his clothes off and held a machete against his throat, saying if he didn't remove the negative posts on social media, they would kill him. When all was said and done, they dropped him off in Passaic. Threats or no threats, the victim immediately called the police. A SWAT team arrested Jabara and charged him with a whole heap of offenses. 2 days later, they arrested his wife for conspiring with her husband. Authorities brought her up on charges of kidnapping, witness tampering, and bribery. Number 3. Sarah Evans's estranged husband. Police arrested Sarah Evans's husband, Harry Barker, in 2022 for trying to run the famous country singer over with his car in Nashville. Prosecutors charged Barker with felony aggravated assault following the attempted hit and run early in the morning. If you're not sure who Sarah Evans is, all you need to know is that she sings country music. Her husband Harry is a former NFL player. Even though the two have been married since 2008, they consider themselves separated. But apparently, Barker was having a lot harder of a time with the separation. Sarah had just left the party at her neighbor's house and was passing her driveway when she saw her husband parked out front. He spotted her as well, and he stomped on the gas and tried to back his vehicle up into the country singer. But he missed. He missed by a lot, and then he took off before Sarah could call the police. But he finally did return to the scene, where police were waiting to arrest him before he did something else crazy. Number 2. The murder of Phil Hartman. Comedian and actor Phil Hartman was famous in the 90s for his work on Saturday Night Live. On May 28, 1998, his wife shot and killed him at the age of just 49. You might not remember Phil's comedic talents, since this was over 20 years ago. He first earned his spot on Saturday Night Live back in 1986. Then he spent 8 years on the show. In 1995, he joined the cast of News Radio, which went on for 5 years. He was well liked in the comedy community. He had lots of Hollywood colleagues, but his life at home was dark. His wife Bryn was his third, with his previous 2 marriages ending in divorce. The couple had 2 children together, but Bryn also had a long history of drug and alcohol abuse. The substance abuse ate away at her sanity, until one day she snapped. She waited for her husband to arrive at their home in Encino, then opened fire without provocation. Number 1. Shark Tank Boat Crash. Kevin O'Leary is the filthy rich Canadian businessman and star of the Shark Tank series. His wife got into some major trouble when she crashed a boat and killed 2 people. Her name is Linda O'Leary, and police originally charged her with the careless operation of a vessel following the incident on August 24, 2019. It happened on Lake Joseph, near the Canadian city of Toronto. Her husband was on board and was a family friend, but it was Linda who was driving the boat. Linda steered their vessel directly into another, killing a man named Gary from Florida and a woman named Susanna from Ontario. The incident injured 3 other people, but the event killed Gary and Susanna. Officials charged Linda in 2019, but the verdict didn't come back until 2022. Considering how incredibly rich and influential this family is in Canada, it should come as no surprise that a jury found Linda not guilty. Her defense lawyer blamed the incident on the craft of the victims being unlit and the fact that there was no moon in the sky. The other boat was sitting in a dark place on the lake. There were no cottage lights on and no moon for her to see by. And so, a court found that Linda, the wife of one of the richest people in the country, was in no way responsible for driving her boat into a group of other people.
Number 10. Through the Roof. When Storm Eunice struck Europe in 2022, it happened with a devastating force. And while there were a lot of victims of this brutal storm, one victim suffered a rather unusual fate. A British citizen in Belgium died after the uncommon event. In the small Belgian town of Ypres, the strong winds blew into a waterway. The storm caught the 79-year-old man in a bad way. The wind picked him up, threw him off his boat, and he died from his injuries. But he wasn't the only one who suffered. As winds up to 80 miles an hour, 129 kilometers per hour, pounded Belgium, it knocked over a crane and it crashed through the roof of a hospital in the town of Tournai. Nobody died, but it was an extremely close call. The tip of the crane broke right through the roof and onto the top floor of the hospital. And in the nearby town of Menin, a young man was in critical condition after being hit by a tree branch. He had gone out for a run in the middle of the storm, only to take a branch to the head. 9 people died during the storm. 1 man in Belgium, 3 in the United Kingdom, 1 in Ireland, and 4 in the Netherlands. Number 9. Electrocuted at home. Tropical storm Eta came crashing into the Florida coast in late 2020. The first death connected to the tempest was a man that the storm electrocuted inside his own home. According to local news, it was about 5:45 a.m. in Bradenton Beach when the electrocution happened. This is near Tampa. The man was moving through his storage area, which was rapidly filling with water when he got hit by a lethal dose of electricity. The police say it was an accident and that one of his appliances was still running. He didn't realize it was on, was trying to save some of his belongings before they were soaked beyond repair. The appliance zapped him. Thousands of volts of electricity zipped through his flooded storage room, and the man had nowhere to run. He didn't realize he had turned on the appliance because the water had already drowned it, and he couldn't see it. Utility workers had to turn the power off to the entire neighborhood before they could recover the unfortunate man's body. Plus, it injured one firefighter trying to access the area where the man was. Shocking, isn't it? Number 8. Failed storm chasers. 3 University of Oklahoma students studying meteorology died in a tragic car accident after intercepting a tornado. It wasn't a tornado that killed them, but a freak accident on their return trip from Kansas on April 29, 2022. According to the New York Times, the deceased are Nicholas Nair, Gavin Short, and Drake Brooks. They were traveling south on Interstate 35 when their truck hydroplaned. The heavy rain from the storm made the road slick, filled it with water, and they got swept out into the middle of the lanes. They then stalled there, right in the center of a busy highway, and a truck smashed into them. Rescue workers pronounced all 3 students, between 19 and 22, dead on the scene. The truck driver that hit them survived, and the wreck hospitalized him with minor injuries. This awful tragedy came as an enormous shock to the weather community, and of course to the families of the young victims. Founder and CEO of AccuWeather, Joel B. Myers, said in a statement how sad it is that such promising young lives were cut so short. It was extra horrible because they chased down the tornado on what was a dramatic interception, only to die at the hands of a rainy road. The most dangerous part of this storm chase was driving home. These 3 students are not the only ones to have died in traffic accidents, either before or after a storm chase. The same thing happened in 2017 to a trio of storm chasers near Spur, Texas. Number 7. Sucked into a tornado. In April 2011, Reginald Epps of Alabama watched in terror as a tornado sucked his 8-year-old son into its path. But don't worry, the kid survived. It left their house in ruins, nothing but a pile of trash and rubble, and even though the tornado sucked the kid into its mouth, he miraculously walked away. According to Reginald, the tornado lifted his son, Reginald Jr., off the top bunk of his bed into the black, swirling darkness. Reginald had just been reaching for his son to grab him and pull him to safety when the tornado beat him to the punch. He reached, the tornado pulled the boy from his grasp, and the walls crumbled around him like paper. That was it. The boy was up and away, off into the storm. Reginald said it was like someone had him on a string and yanked him away just as his fingertips nearly touched the boy. Not knowing what else to do, the Alabama father threw himself over his other child, 6-year-old James Peter, while his wife was busy shielding their other child. It was a tense few moments, with both parents acting as anchors to keep their kids from being sucked into the storm as rain fell on them in sheets. It was a nightmare that ended with a miracle. When the storm subsided, Reginald looked up and saw the silhouette of a shadowy figure walking to him across the debris. It was his son, who the tornado had picked up, threw around like a rag doll, and then dropped him back almost where it all started. He had a small gash on his neck and a few bumps on his head, but no major injuries. The boy said it felt like he had been floating in the air, then just slowly floated back down until his feet touched solid ground. He was in a lot better shape than his father, who suffered a collapsed left lung shielding his other child. Maybe angels do fly. Number 6. Stuck in a storm shelter. A woman got stuck in her tornado shelter for 3 days back in 2012 and thought she was going to die. Her name is Debbie Height, and in 2014, she sued the maker of her tornado shelter for nearly causing her slow and agonizing death. Debbie thought she was so close to death that she used her fake nails to scrawl a farewell message to her family in case she was dead by the time anyone found her. It all happened on a Friday night during an intense storm. Debbie ran into her flat-safe tornado shelter. It worked like a charm, and then the storm eventually ended. But when she tried to climb out of her shelter, something had jammed the door. She was stuck underground near her house in Edmond, Oklahoma, and nobody was coming for her. She ended up being down there for 56 hours. Debbie thought she would starve to death in the dark, It was lucky the storm happened on a Friday, because when she didn't show up for work on Monday, one of her colleagues was worried and went to investigate. He found her down there, shriveled and starving, and helped her out into the light. Number 5. Irony in Louisiana. In 2016, a flood destroyed the home of a Christian lobbyist. This wouldn't be big news except for the fact the lobbyist had recently preached that God only sends natural disasters to punish people who aren't straight. His name is Tony Perkins, and a flood of biblical proportions hit his house in Louisiana. Tony is the president of the Christian group Family Research Council and has been pretty loud through the years about his stance on human sexuality. The record-breaking flood devastated Louisiana, but seemed to hit Tony's house with certain unmistakable rancor. Not a single piece of it was left, and he and his family had to move into an RV. In the end, the religious zealot suffered a most ironic disaster. He told everyone storms only punish sinners, and yet he ended up being carried away in a flood. Where's your ark now? Number 4. Fallen tree. When a major storm swept through Arkansas in April 2022, one woman was unluckier than most. The severe weather outbreak had already been going on for days, spawning deadly tornadoes and creating monster winds. There was hail falling from the sky, and huge chunks of the central and southern US were in turmoil. The victim in Arkansas was sitting on her couch at 4:30 p.m., waiting for the wind to die down. This was in the small town of Risen. Sadly, she never got off that couch. A tree toppled over, broke through her house, and then pinned her to the very couch she was sitting on. She died right there on the sofa, crushed to death by Mother Nature. It was an untimely and horrible way to go, and others through the region were also suffering the effects of the storm. It injured 23 people in the Texas town of Salado when the winds hit an incredible 165 miles an hour, 266 kilometers per hour. The storm was so big and so vast that residents also had tornadoes in Iowa and Minnesota. Number 3. The solar storm. For the past 3 years, SpaceX has been busy sending thousands and thousands of satellites into space, where they orbit Earth to deliver high-speed internet to all the humans from above. But when they deployed 49 new satellites on February 3rd, 2022, things didn't go as planned. A freak outburst from the sun created a geomagnetic storm which knocked 40 of the 49 Starlink satellites out of commission. The solar storm damaged them so severely that even after they re-entered Earth's atmosphere, there was nothing SpaceX could do but light them up. And although I called it a freak outburst, it happens all the time. Earth isn't the only place plagued by brutal storms. Tech companies have been struggling with a way to provide internet from space because solar outbursts are so frequent they destroy the technology. And to make things worse, the sun is ramping up to its hyperactive peak period in 2025, when the sun will be at its stormiest. According to Hugh Lewis, an expert in this field from the University of Southampton, there is probably an extreme event coming. A solar storm, or solar scream, could wipe out all of SpaceX's satellites and any other technology orbiting the planet, about 130 miles, 239 kilometers up. Number 2. Struck by lightning. John Moberg and his daughter Ashley are huge Yankees fans. They traveled to Tampa from Elmhurst, Illinois to watch a preseason baseball game between the New York Yankees and the Atlanta Braves. After a long time of being stuck at home base because of the pandemic, it was the perfect way to embrace 2022. Unfortunately, things didn't go quite as planned. When they sat down to watch the game, a storm was brewing overhead. By the 6th inning, the rain was so intense the game had to be stopped. Father and daughter had no reason to stick around, so they went to check out a souvenir shop. They bought some trinkets, then went back to their vehicle. The problem started when they couldn't find their car. It was raining cats and dogs. Cars jammed the lot, and the duo waited underneath a tree to take shelter. As you may already know, underneath a tree is probably the worst place to hide during a thunderstorm. There was a bright flash from the sky, a deafening boom, and Ashley saw her father flying through the air like a rag doll. But it was weird because she was also flying through the air. A lightning bolt came down and zapped them both, sending them sprawling across the asphalt. It knocked John unconscious, but Ashley was aware the whole time. Luckily, the pair didn't get hit by a direct strike. For whatever crazy reason, the lightning bolt struck right between them with a force so intense it knocked the shoes off Ashley's feet. When John woke up, he thought he had had a stroke. John stayed in the hospital for a few days while he healed from a broken cheekbone. Ashley had burns all over her neck, but was otherwise totally okay. Number 1. Dallas crane collapse. When storms pummeled the Dallas area in June 2019, a terrifying disaster happened. A freak accident killed a young woman and injured 5 others when a crane fell onto an old East Dallas apartment building. These people had been in their homes minding their own business on a Sunday afternoon. They were waiting for the storm to pass when the intense winds knocked over the enormous piece of machinery. It crashed into the east side of the building like a giant's hammer, crushing all it touched. Authorities identified the woman as 29-year-old Kirsten Simone Smith. First responders pulled her out of the building, but unfortunately she passed away at the hospital shortly after. The mayhem hospitalized 5 others, with 2 of them in critical condition. As for the crane, it fell from the construction site next door. It completely collapsed from the storm winds, crumbling into the apartments and the parking garage. The damage it did to the parking garage was shocking. The crane punched a hole through the center of the garage, damaging dozens of cars and creating a kind of sinkhole of twisted metal. And to make things even scarier, winds reached about 70 miles an hour, 113 kilometers per hour during the storm. All those huge cranes you see operating in any city in the country, any of them could fall in heavy winds, taking the neighboring buildings down with them. Would you rather be caught out in a lightning storm or trapped by floodwaters? Which natural disaster terrifies you the most? Let me know in the comments, and thank you for watching today's video.